Good morning, beloved, and welcome to Changing the World with God and with Good. Well, for about 5 or 10 minutes or so, I get to share God with you, sharing with you simple, universal kingdom principles that are meant to apply for all or to all of humanity without religious bias, ethnic bias, national bias, political bias, or gender bias. And for just a moment, I want to talk from the subject non-reckless risks. Non-reckless risk taking. And sometimes you'll find that will venture off and deal with issues that are what most would consider non-spiritual issues, like the message today, non-reckless risk-taking. And I do this because, again, my intent and God's intent in sending me into the earth was to minister to the whole person. And because we live in a physical world that requires us to do physical things, we can't just pray our way into paying our bills. We can't just pray our way into meeting our obligations and responsibilities and taking care of those that we love and doing things in the earth. It requires us to encompass the whole being of the person, the spiritual being, the physical being, and the emotional being, because God isn't going to do for us what he has blessed us to be or capable of doing for ourselves. And that's not to say that God won't intervene in a situation even when we've not done all that we could do to bless us in that situation. But God requires us to do things, and because this is not just a spiritual world, but a physical world, inhabited by spiritual beings that are wrapped in physical flesh, it requires sometimes for me to have to speak to you about physical matters. And today I want to talk with you about the fact and the reality that sometimes in this earth, in order to find success, in order to move into the places that God would have us to move into, it's going to require us to take some non-reckless risks. And this is just the truth. And it applies whether you're a Christian, whether you're Muslim, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Jew, whether you're Palestinian, whether you are male or female. Sometimes you're going to have to take risk to get to where you're trying to get to. When you break it down, the simple act of walking out of your house every day requires of you to take a risk. Now, many of you will say that that's not reckless because, and then will justify that it's not really a risk because, we have to go, we have to go to work, we have to take the kids to school, we have to do things in this earth. So what we wind up doing is minimizing the fact that we are taking a risk that we may not make it home that evening. But we take a risk in leaving our house. And again, sometimes, oftentimes we are going to have to take risks to get to where God would have us to get to. But now there's a difference between walking out of your house, which is taking a risk, and walking into the middle of a gunfight, which is reckless. You see, you don't have to take reckless risks in order to risk some things, in order to take the risks that are necessary to get you to where God would have you to get to the place that you would have to get to. Sometimes, just the simple act of entering into a relationship or seeking a mate. I'm here to tell you that even that requires risks. Everything that we do requires us to risk something. even staying in the house shut in comes with the risk that the house may catch on fire, that something may happen to the house that causes the house to collapse. Everything in this earth requires a risk. Now, again, there's a difference between taking a risk and being reckless in your relationships when seeking a mate or in that relationships. I'm here to tell you that it requires risk. It requires the risk that you may not find a mate. You have to risk the reality that finding a mate and becoming one with another person comes with the risk of disappointment. And I'm just here to tell you, because I want you not to allow risks to keep you stagnated, but to embrace the fact that in order to get to where you're trying to get to, it's going to require of you some risks. I mean, you have to risk in getting with that man and getting with that woman, that there's a great risk of divorce. Risk. Inherent risks that there's some that you can minimize, but you can't completely alleviate the reality that there are risks in the things that we do in order to get to the places that we desire to get to. I mean, it requires you to risk having to start over. Risk. In order to get to where we're trying to get to, we're going to have to risk some things. Now, again, there's a difference. And the message is none reckless, risk-taking. And I say that because there's a difference between being reckless in dating 5 or 10 different men and women at the same time. You don't have to date 5 men at the same time. You don't have to date 5 ladies at the same time to find a mate. Now, that is reckless. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to be reckless in your risk-taking to find the things that you desire. I mean, even when thinking about and pursuing a job or pursuing a career or pursuing a business of your own, it requires risk taken. And I'm just here to tell you so that you go ahead and prepare yourself for the risks that come along the journey, for the risks that are almost necessary and inherent in moving into the places that you would desire to be, to the destinations that God has prepared just for you. It requires you taking risk. And again, in thinking about that business and thinking about that job that you desire, it comes with risk. As it relates to the business that you want to start, it requires you risking the possibility that you may lose your money. And I'm just here to tell you this. Not to frighten you from moving into the things that God would have you to move into, but just to prepare you. You see, it's something about knowing what to expect when you get somewhere that kind of gives you an assurance that you can deal with what's coming ahead. But what hinders most of us is the unknown. We don't know what's ahead. So it becomes easier to stay where we are as opposed to moving into the unknown. So I'm here to tell you, beloved, so that it not be the unknown, so that you can recognize that, yes, I'm going to have to take some non-reckless risks to get to where God has created me to walk into. And again, as it relates to opening your own business, establishing your own firm, you've got to be willing to risk your money. You've got to sometimes be willing to risk instability for a while. Sometimes, when you're moving into a new atmosphere and a new sphere in life and a new place, it comes. And in moving into that place, you find that there's a lot of instability because you're transitioning from one place to another place and you hadn't got solid footing in that new place yet, and it seems as if it's unstable. I'm here to prepare you so that you know not to turn back when you find yourself in that place of instability, because you've got to be willing to risk. instability to get to where God has desired and created you to walk in. You got to be willing to risk the possibility of rejection. Yes, you may go into that bank and the banker, you got to be willing to risk the fact that the banker may say, no, we're not going to give you that loan, which means that now you've got to go back to the table and figure another approach to getting the resources, the money that you need to be able to move that business where you want it to be. Again, you've got to be willing to risk these things. You've got to even be willing to risk that, that business idea, that business model may fail. It may not produce what you desired and intended for it to produce. And again, this is just the reality that we all face if we're going to venture out and become what God has created us to become. It's just inherent in moving into success that you're going to have to risk some things. Again, you may have to risk, and I guess I should back up. It's not may. You will have to risk the possibility that you may have to start over. You've invested time, you've invested energy, you've invested your money in this business idea, and it just didn't work out. It didn't pan out. It didn't produce what you desired for it to produce, and now you've got to start over. This is just our reality. But again, you've got to understand, nothing ventured, nothing risked, nothing gained. If you decide that you're going to stay on the sideline, then you can never score a touchdown. You can never score that game-winning basket. You can never hit that home run that wins the World Series. Because you're not willing to risk the fact that you may get up to the plate and strike out. You may get the ball and you may fumble. You may get tackled. You may take the shot and it fails to go in. But in order to be successful, you've got to be willing to take a risk. You've got to risk being ridiculed and humiliated if you want the success that God has destined just for you. And beloved, I'm here to tell you that He has destined greatness for you. He has created you to walk with kings and queens and to live with the fat of the land and to have the right desires of your heart. He didn't create you to be without and to have to do without. He created you in His image. He gave you dominion to walk into the places that He has created uniquely for you. But that requires you to take some risk. Again, nothing ventured, nothing risked, nothing gained. And I'm here to tell you, beloved, that in this earth, in this world that we live in, you're going to have to take some calculated risks. It's just our reality. But that shouldn't scare us. It should make us feel good. Yeah, I'm okay with the fact that I've got to take risks. You see, most of us allow risks to scare us. We think about, and again, let me back up and say that in all our risk taking, again, it should be calculated. Whether it's to start a business, whether it's to enter into a relationship, whether it's to save a relationship, whatever it is. I mean, as it relates to starting your business, you shouldn't, it has to be calculated. You shouldn't risk your mortgage or your place to cover yourself, your place of shelter. Calculate it. No, you maybe you shouldn't risk your children's college education and college fund. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you shouldn't risk the sanctity of your family and your relationship with your mate. Maybe that's not calculated. Maybe you shouldn't risk your health. No. See, it has to be calculated risk. Maybe you shouldn't risk your freedom and take penitentiary chances just to be successful. Maybe you shouldn't do those things because maybe those things don't equate to calculated risks. You see, but what we do is we allow all risk to scare us. Yes, yes, yes. And I know that risk taking can be very scary, can be very scary, which is why so many of us talk ourselves out of success. We tell ourselves that maybe it's not going to work. Maybe I should just stay where I am because, at least I'm comfortable there. Going into a place that I'm not familiar with. One, it breeds uncomfortableness. Two, it breeds uncertainty. And three, what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? So we talk ourselves out of it. We talk ourselves out of it because we become so consumed with others, what others think. Well, what are they going to say? What are they going to think? They're going to look at me and start to ask, well, who do you think you are? Why did you even go out there and try that anyway? So then we allow that to keep us stagnated and stuck into the places that God really hadn't intended for us to permanently reside. It was just supposed to be transition. It was supposed to be a point between A and C. Maybe it was B and you just got stuck there, thinking that B was where God had intended for you to permanently reside. And then it becomes easy to become consumed with what others may think about what you are pursuing, what you are trying to do, what you are destined to do. And then we talk ourselves out of it because, we convince ourselves that we couldn't handle loss. Well, I can't handle, having to look for somewhere else to stay. I can't handle having, maybe losing my car. I can't handle the instability of not knowing what I'm going to eat or where food is going to come from. I can't handle that. It's just easier to stay where I am, to remain where I am. And then what happens is we convince ourselves and we come to a place where truly it's easier to stay where we are than to risk anything to move into the place that God has created us to move in. But I'm here to tell you, beloved, that greatness is just awaiting you to reach out and grab it. It's saying, here I am. Come on and grab me. Come on and grab me. And again, you don't have to go big and you don't have to go reckless, but you do have to go. You do have to be willing to take a risk. Yes, you, me, and everybody else. In order to get somewhere, you got to risk something that will allow you and help you in the transition of getting there. You got to be willing to risk something, beloved. So again, all I say is decide what you want. Decide what God has created you to do. Don't worry about what others think. Decide what you want. Decide where you're going. And then plan how to get there. It's like, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, in the USA. But if I was going to travel to Wyoming somewhere, place that I've not gone, then I would have to plan how I was going to get there. I would have to plan the directions that would take me from where I am to where I'm trying to get to. Not only would I have to plan the direction, but then I would also have to decide and to determine what resources would be needed to get me there. So what I'm saying to you is to decide what you want, decide where you want to go, plan how you're going to get there, the direction that you're going to have to travel to get there. Then create a list of the resources and the things that are needed to get you there. And then, beloved, most importantly, begin taking non-reckless risks. You've got to risk something to get something. And I'm here to tell you that they're not as scary as we make them. We talk ourselves into being fearful. But just as we talk ourselves into being fearful, I'm here to tell you to talk yourself into being courageous. Talk yourself into being fearless. Talk yourself into action. Because when you move, God will move with you. I love you. I thank you for tuning in. And until next time, goodbye.